You're not stable enough to raise a child, Maura. Maybe it's time someone else took over. That was the moment everything cracked. In a crowded school hallway beneath fluorescent lights and whispered rumors, Maura Linsley, widowed alone and holding on to fragments of truth, realized they weren't just trying to erase her husband. They were coming for her son. She thought they buried the truth with Gabe, but some things refused to stay quiet. Before we dive in, let me know, what time are you listening to this and where are you? Drop a comment below. We'd love to hear from you. The chisel rang sharp against the floor, a tremor shooting up Maura's arm. She shifted her weight, pressing her knee harder into the pad, beneath her sweat clinging to her neck despite the coastal chill. The concrete gave reluctantly, flakes crumbling at its edges as though it knew eviction had come. Silas perched on an overturned milk crate, legs swinging a cardboard sheet balanced across his lap. He dragged a marker with fierce focused tongue poking from the corner of his mouth. "That's the escape pod," he mumbled without glancing up. Her eyes flicked over. The sketch was crude, rounded, hull-odd fins, a bubble dome on top, but intent ran through the lines. Maybe too much. She wiped her brow with the back of her hand streaking gray dust. "You planning a getaway?" Silas shrugged. "Just building a backup, in case someone gets stuck." A hairline crack spread beneath the chisel. She tapped again, and a piece of concrete snapped free, exposing a smooth curve of metal beneath cold, dull, unaged. Her hand hovered before brushing the dust aside. It wasn't rusted. It wasn't old. It wasn't meant to be there. She set the chisel down without a sound. Behind her, Silas hummed, lightly swapping markers. Sharpie ink mixed with the scent of earth and oxidized steel. Maura stared at the hatch revealed through the jagged, oval, recessed panel industrial latch. Two cables sheared clean at the slab's edge. Deliberate cuts. Stillness held. Not confusion, not shock, just the quiet recognition of a question left too long unanswered. Her palm pressed hard against her thigh, anchoring her. Silas yawned. "Can we get burgers tonight?" She blinked. "Yeah, maybe." A wrench clattered back into the toolbox. She rose stiffly, knees aching, and stepped over the hatch's edge. Her boot landed an inch from a severed cable. She didn't glance down again. Not yet. Concrete dust still clung faintly to her skin when she gripped the back of the folding chair. The fabric scratched her palm as she sank into it, wedged between strangers in the crowded room. Fluorescent lights buzzed above their cold glare, flattening every surface into beige and shadow. A banner stretched across the far wall, "Community First," though no one seemed to be looking at it. She sat near the back, pinned between the aisle and a broad man with a clipboard who sighed like it was his duty. Her canvas coat grew stifling in the packed room, but she kept it on. The folder across her lap had begun to wrinkle under her grip, folded over twice to give her restless hand something to hold. Up front, a volunteer adjusted the mic on the wooden podium. Item 6: Site irregularities and civilian property assessments. No one stirred until he walked in. Victor Sennett moved with the careful stillness of a man who assumed cameras were always rolling. Navy suit, crisp lines, steel gray hair combed smooth without a strand astray. He gave the council a single nod and took his place at the podium. The screen behind him lit with the seal of Galleon Systems. Maura knew it instantly. The same emblem marked faintly on the corner of one of Gabe's schematics, and again etched into the latch of the hatch she had unearthed. Victor offered a shallow smile. "Thank you, council members. I appreciate the opportunity to present a matter involving both public safety and federal oversight." He clicked the remote. A grainy aerial shot filled the screen, her backyard, the rotting shed, the scar in the ground where she'd dug. The crowd leaned forward as one. "This image," he said, "comes from a joint satellite sweep performed last week. Our engineers identified an unregistered substructure, steel reinforced, sealed, likely from a decommissioned military prototype beneath a residential property." He let the pause stretch. "That property belongs to Mrs. Maura Linsley." The name rippled through the room. Heads turned, not all at once, but in waves like wheat bending under wind. She didn't move. "We're requesting access to assess potential safety hazards," Victor continued. "Until then, further excavation or interference with the structure is prohibited by emergency ordinance." From 3 rows ahead, a woman leaned toward her neighbor. "Wasn't she the one with the Navy husband? Poor thing's never been the same." Another voice, low and amused. "Wouldn't be surprised if she's hiding something. always looked off. Maura stared forward, eyes locked on the unmoving slideshow. Their words drifted to her distant, as if her body stayed in the pew while her mind slipped out the back door. Silas tugged at her sleeve. Mom. Her gaze dropped. His cheeks were flushed, his voice unsteady. I saw that guy before, he whispered, pointing with a small, firm gesture. In the game video. The one Dad recorded. Remember the man with the voice? She froze. What video in the handheld? The one I used when mine broke. It had some file in it. I didn't watch the whole thing. He didn't realize what he'd just confessed. On the screen, a second image appeared, thermal mapping in dull oranges and blues. Victor spoke about conductivity risk factors, hazardous materials. None of it mattered. Maura's pulse throbbed behind her ears. She clutched the folder tighter, the corners bending against her thigh. If the file was real, it could explain why Gabe had grown so quiet in those final months, why he hid tools in strange places, why he kept whispering, "Don't tell anyone I brought this home." Victor's voice carried over the room. We believe it's a remnant from a classified maritime project suspended over a decade ago. Our concern is that reactivation, intentional or not, could destabilize pressure seals or trigger a recall protocol. A man near the sidewall scoffed. Or she's just been digging around trying to build her own submarine. Laughter broke out, small but sharp, like someone letting the air out of a balloon just to hear it hiss. Maura didn't respond. The heat on her face came not from shame, but from something older, tighter. Silas's hand slipped into hers. Is he the one who hurt Dad? The room hadn't noticed them. Not really, not yet. But in that instant, something shifted. Not in them, but in her. She rose. Her knees barely made a sound against the tile. The folder stayed shut in her grasp, though the air around it felt heavier. Victor paused, eyes flicking briefly toward the back. He didn't smile this time. Neither did she. Her knuckles still whitened around the folder when the bell above the diner door gave a half-hearted jingle. Warm air rolled over her, heavy with bacon grease and old coffee stinging after the chill outside. She let the door swing shut and scanned the vinyl booth before spotting him near the back, a man stirring creamer into his cup with a hand too steady for his age. Royce hadn't changed much. His hair was thinner, his cheeks more sunken, but the way he glanced up, quick assessing, was exactly the same. He nodded toward the seat across from him before she spoke. You look like hell, he said, not unkindly. Maura slid in, shrugged off her coat, and tucked the folder at her side. That seems to be the general consensus this week. He didn't smile. From his coat pocket, he drew a napkin with a faint blueprint sketched in pencil. Got your message. Took me a while to find this. It's rough. Gabe wasn't a neat drafter. But that serial number, it matches what we worked on at Galliant 12 years ago. Maura leaned in, eyes narrowing. So it's real. The thing in my floor. It was called Project Rook. Maritime Emergency Navigation Autonomous Submersibles, designed for deep rescue ops. He paused. Classified, then scrapped. Too expensive. Not flashy enough to fund. Her fingertips brushed the edge of the napkin. He said they buried it. Royce held her gaze, then nodded once. Because he didn't want to be buried with it. The waitress came over, poured coffee without asking. Maura left hers untouched, hands clenched in her lap beneath the table. He was scared, Royce added. The last time I saw him, he said he was thinking of turning everything over. Not to the media, just to someone higher up. Said if anything happened to him, someone would find the files. The window behind them rattled as a gust of wind pressed against the glass. A freighter's horn echoed in the distance, long and hollow. And then he drowned, Maura said. Royce didn't answer. Steam curled from the cup in front of her. She reached for it, then stopped. If I keep pushing, I don't know where it ends. I've got Silas to think about. He's already... Her voice faltered. He's already being pulled into this. Royce folded his napkin in half. I know what it's like to lose someone and wish you'd done something sooner. But not doing anything, it haunts longer. She didn't reply, only nodded faintly before sliding out of the booth. By the time she reached home, the sun had dipped behind the hills and left the sky a colorless wash. The porch light flickered once before dying. Inside, the sound of Silas unpacking his backpack drifted from the kitchen, a tuneless hum carrying with it the rhythm of routine. He didn't look up when she entered. "How was school?" she asked, peeling off her boots near the door. "They called me Submarine Boy," he said too casually. Her stomach dipped. She crossed to the kitchen and leaned against the counter. "Did something happen?" Ms. Noreen said. "Maybe you needed time off." He crumpled a permission slip into a ball and tossed it toward the trash. It missed. She asked if I was scared at home. Maura bent slowly to pick up the paper. "What did you say?" I said no. But she didn't believe me. The air between them tightened the way it did before a thunderstorm. Silas fidgeted with his water bottle, twisting the cap back and forth. "I don't want to switch schools," he added, "just because you're digging holes." Her breath caught mid-chest. Words rose, but none were shaped for a 9-year-old. They came as fragments, lost out the rising tide she couldn't hold back. Instead, she poured him a glass of milk and set it gently in front of him. He sipped once, then whispered, "I think Dad wanted you to find it." That hatch. Maura stayed standing in the doorway between kitchen and hall fingers, pressed to the frame. "I don't know what he wanted," she admitted, quieter than intended. In the living room, the heater kicked on with a groan, a low familiar rumble that filled the house but offered no warmth. Her palm lingered on the wood before she pushed herself toward the stairs. Upstairs, the lamp on Silas's desk flickered when she twisted the cord. She brushed aside comic books and a tangle of controller wires. The faint scent of apple shampoo and dryer sheets clung to the space, his small orbit untouched by everything unraveling beyond it. She told herself she wasn't looking for anything. The old game console sat lopsided on a plastic crate, one joystick stripped of its rubber grip. A forgotten relic replaced months ago, but never thrown out. It chirped softly when powered on the loading screen, blinking with stubborn slowness after too long in the dust. Almost without thinking, she checked the memory card. It slid into place with a faint snap. The main menu appeared. Nothing unusual until her eyes caught a folder labeled Test Log G. No cartoon icon, no game data. She hesitated, then pressed play. The screen went black, static, and then Gabe. Not a video of him, just his hands calloused and stained, adjusting the components of a small navigation unit. He spoke mostly to himself, naming specs, speeds, distance, tolerances. The camera wobbled, corrected while a compressor whined in the background. It looked like their old shed, but rearranged tools she didn't recognize, schematics taped across the wall. She hadn't heard his voice in over 2 years. The sound struck like a lungful of cold air. Gabe cursed softly when something sparked, then laughed under his breath. "Still pulling too much current. Might need a new regulator? Or I'm gonna fry this thing before it gets wet." A pause. He moved out of frame. The recording went on quiet now, only the low hum of a cooling fan. Then another voice entered. Calm, controlled, male. "You're playing with fire, Gabe. You know what happens to people who don't listen." Her heart lurched. Gabe snapped back sharper this time. "This was never yours to bury." Silence. Then the other voice, again measured, almost condescending. "You've got a wife. A kid. Think about what they'd lose." The screen trembled as if the recorder had been jostled. The image cut out, replaced by a system error screen. Maura stared at the console. The fan's drone filled the room like fog. She reached forward, hesitated, then hit replay. Watched the same sequence again. Gabe's movements, his voice, the warning that sliced in like a scalpel under skin. She didn't recognize the second man's face, but the cadence, the phrasing, it matched Victor at the town hall. The same polished tone, the same quiet threat. The chair creaked as she leaned back. Pulse ticking in her ears, she noticed the folder from the diner resting half open on the bed pages, tilted as if they might spill. She wasn't trembling, not really, but something deeper had shifted. Hearing Gabe again, especially with someone else in the room who shouldn't have been there, cut sharper than grief. Her breath came shallow. A whisper in the back of her mind asked if she imagined it. But the details lined up too cleanly: the project, the timing, the voice. This wasn't grief playing tricks. This was proof. The doorknob clicked. Silas peeked in socked feet, quiet on the hallway carpet. "Hey," he said. I brushed my teeth. "Can I sleep in your room tonight?" She nodded without looking up. "Yeah, go ahead. I'll be there in a minute." He lingered, then disappeared. The console still glowed on the desk. She removed the memory card, slid it into the case with the schematics, and tucked everything beneath the floorboard where she kept cash and paperwork. As the board settled back into place, a single thought pressed louder than the rest. Someone else had heard that voice before Gabe died, and now she had it, recorded, fragile, but enough. Concrete dust still tingled against her fingertips when she found herself at the school gate, arms folded tight, back pressed to the chain-link fence. Sunlight scattered through the trees, jittery shadows slicing across the walkway. Parents stood in small circles, murmuring about weather test scores, whose kid might need glasses. None of them looked her way. They didn't have to. She spotted the principal, Miss Harrow, stepping out from the main building with a clipboard hugged to her chest. Behind her, Silas's teacher, Ms. Noreen, followed at a distance, smiling nervously and adjusting her scarf as if it could shield her from what was about to happen. Mrs. Linsley, the principal, said, tone already dipped in apology, "Thank you for coming." Maura didn't answer. They led her through the side door into a small office with chairs too low for adults and a poster about emotional resilience taped crookedly on the wall. "We've had some concerns," Ms. Harrow began. "Parents have expressed worry over conversations their children have had with Silas. About submarines buried in your backyard, military secrets, explosives." "That's not what he said," Maura cut in. Regardless, the tone has created discomfort. Ms. Noreen leaned forward. "We know Silas is a good kid, bright, curious, but it seems like he might be repeating things he doesn't fully understand." "I don't coach him," Maura said, voice dry. "And I'm not unstable if that's where this is headed." Mrs. Harrow offered a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "If concerns persist, we may need to consult Child Protective Services." As a precaution, the fluorescent light above flickered, then steadied. Before she could reply, someone knocked on the open door. A man in a dark blazer stepped in, leather briefcase in hand, smile polished for boardrooms. "Sorry to interrupt. I'm Matthew Lang. I work with Galliant Systems. We're trying to resolve a land use complication involving Mrs. Linsley's property." Maura turned slowly. "How do you know I'm here?" He chuckled. "Small town. People talk." She stood. "You shouldn't be on school grounds." Lang raised both palms, mock innocent. "Just offering help. My company's prepared to fast-track an agreement fully legal. We help you clear the title, manage the inspection, and in return you give access to that substructure. No drama, no press." The two women in the room stiffened, but stayed silent. Maura met his eyes. "Is that the same kind of help you offered?" Gabe Lang's smile faltered. She walked past him without waiting for a response. The next morning, someone tagged her in a local Facebook thread titled, "Should Unstable Parents Have Full Custody?" A cropped photo of her from the church meeting showed her expression mid-sentence. One comment read, "Didn't she have a breakdown after her husband died, poor kid?" Another post cited unconfirmed sources claiming she'd been seen speaking to herself in public. She sat on the kitchen floor, phone clutched, tight legs drawn up against the cabinet. The dishwasher hummed behind her, indifferent. Silas wandered in with a banana and a paper towel. "Mom," he said quietly, "are you crazy?" Her head snapped up. His tone wasn't cruel, just confused. "Where did you hear that a kid said you used to be in a hospital? They said you're not allowed to have guns or sharp things." The phone slipped from her hand and hit the linoleum with a soft thud. "I've never—" Her throat closed. "That's not true." Silas stared at his feet. She pulled herself upright, fingers digging into the counter. "Look at me." He lifted his eyes. "I'm your mom. I'm not perfect, but I'm not dangerous. You're safe here. Always." He nodded too quickly. After he left, she remained alone, palm pressed to the counter. A single fly buzzed near the window pane, tracing the same useless circle. Her phone lit again. The Facebook thread had grown. She turned it face down and went to the closet where Gabe's hard case sat wedged behind old blankets, the one with his backup drives and marked schematics. Dragging it out, she knelt in the narrow hallway and clicked open the latch. Hinges squeaked. If they wanted her quiet, they'd picked the wrong week. By the time she pushed through the Marine Library's creaking glass doors, the weight of Gabe's case still pulled at her shoulder. The scent of wet paper and old varnish curled around her sharp after the salt air outside. Past the empty reading tables and racks of maritime history, she spotted a man at the far end. Dark corduroy jacket, canvas messenger bag slung across one chair. Reed Holloway looked up briefly, one brow raised in silent acknowledgement, then returned to the folder in his lap. Reed Holloway didn't bother with greetings. "You're late," he said, flipping a page without looking up. "I didn't realize this was formal." "It isn't, but time is how you learn who's serious." She sat across from him, pulling the worn video drive from her coat pocket and placing it on the table like a pawn in a silent bet. His finger stopped mid-page. Slowly, he reached for the drive, plugged it into a small tablet, and waited as the screen loaded. The library's heater coughed once in the ceiling above them, then fell back into quiet. They watched the clip in silence. Gabe's voice, the machine, the interruption. When it ended, Reed leaned back, exhaled slowly through his nose, then looked her in the eye for the first time. Something shifted in his face, not surprise exactly, more like resignation. "Jesus," he muttered. "You recognize the voice?" He didn't answer right away. He unplugged the drive, pocketed it, and rubbed a hand across his jaw. "6 years ago," he said, "I investigated a logistics contract tied to Galleon. Billions in missing development funds, all laundered through Shell subsidiaries. I traced part of it to a canceled program, Naval Rescue Deep Sea Autonomous Testing. But the files I needed were sealed. The man who tried to leak them disappeared. I lost my clearance, my credentials, half my friends. And the article never ran." Maura studied him. "You think this is the same project? I know it is." Her pulse quickened, though her expression stayed still. "You want to blow this up," she said. "No." Reed's voice dropped. "I want to blow them up, and you might be the crack they didn't think would hold." The words settled heavy between them. She folded her arms. "You think I'm a liability. I think you're a wild card. But the truth, that video, it's the missing tooth in a busted jaw. It makes the whole thing talk." A beat. The librarian coughed behind the desk. Maura lowered her gaze, then met his eyes again. "I didn't ask for this." "Neither did I," he said. The pause that followed wasn't empty, but weighted, the kind where people decide whether to keep walking or turn back. Reed leaned forward, forearms braced on the table. "There's one problem. You've got a piece of the picture, but we still need the rest. Your husband kept backups, right? Project logs, data dumps, maybe the original memos." "Maybe," she said cautiously. "Then we need access. His old drive, his lab notes, whatever they buried. They sealed that building. It's under surveillance." Reed didn't blink. "Then you're going to unseal it." Her breath hitched. "You want me to break in? I want you to retrieve what's yours." Technically, his effects were never claimed by the family. It was declared military property after his death, quietly. She raked a hand through her hair, jaw tight. "So I just walk into a locked facility and hope no one notices." "We don't have the luxury of clean hands," Reed said, "and you already kicked the hornet's nest. They'll come for you either way. You might as well come armed." The overhead lights hummed. A gull's cry pierced the docks. Maura kept her gaze past his shoulder at the rain-spattered glass, lips parted but silent. He let her think. When she finally nodded, it wasn't dramatic, just a slight tilt of her chin. Reed rose, zipped his bag, and pushed the chair back. "I'll get the gear," he said. She didn't press for details, and he offered none. The chill hit first, damp air clinging to her sleeves as she followed him past a line of broken pallets. Salt lay heavy over everything, metal, breath, memory. The warehouse hunched at the pier's end siding, torn open to the wind, its frame looming like a rusted skeleton, half swallowed by fog and time. Reed moved a step ahead, flashlight angled low. They'd parked 2 streets back behind a wall of abandoned shipping containers, their vehicle half hidden beneath a tarp. Precaution came naturally to him. "Looks like a shipyard that forgot it was ever alive," he muttered. Maura kept her silence. Her eyes stayed fixed on the warehouse, where Gabe had spent too many nights, always saying he was just finishing one more test. Fingers tightening on the satchel strap, she felt her heartbeat pick up as they crossed the threshold into the cold dark. The door creaked on its hinges, reluctant to let them in. A metallic groan rippled overhead. The air grew damp and sharp, carrying old oil and the faint scorch of burned wire. Dust swirled in the flashlight's beam like something unsettled. Reed angled toward a side corridor. "Records room's down here," he said, motioning with his chin. "If they haven't cleared it out." Maura followed into the building's belly, their steps muffled by layers of grime and rot. The last time she'd come here, someone had offered coffee from a dented thermos with the word "hope" scraped across the side. She couldn't recall the man's face, only the kindness of the gesture, and Gabe winking at her from across the hall like he still couldn't believe she'd shown up. At the hallway's end, a utility closet gaped open. Reed swept his light over a metal cabinet padlocked and bound with tape, long yellowed by time. Here. Maura stepped forward, brushed her fingers over the keypad. She tried March 8th, Silas's birthday. Nothing. Gabe's birthday. Still nothing. At last she entered their wedding anniversary. A green light blinked once. The lock released with a hiss. They exchanged a glance, then pulled the drawer open slowly. 3 hard drives lay wrapped in static-proof sleeves. Beneath them sat a folder tied with twine and a rolled blueprint cinched by a Galliant-marked band. Reed spread the blueprint across a rusted work table. Maura leaned closer, scanning the lines. Tunnels, not civilian-designed military grade, with distribution hubs marked in red. One hub sat less than 3 miles from her backyard. Gabe's signature sprawled across the margin, jagged and rushed. "This looks like a logistics route," Reed murmured. "Moving something heavy, high security." "It's not just theory," Maura said, pointing at the bottom stamp. "That's Gabe's confirmation mark. These were real." Reed lifted another sheet, an email printout with metadata tags and a blacked-out header. "This was filed with the zoning board. That seal means someone local approved it." Maura drew in a breath, stepping back. A light tremor ran through her hands. They knew, she whispered. "Somebody here knew exactly what this was. They buried it. Or got paid to look away," Reed muttered. "If town officials are in Galliant's pocket, the game changes." The thought struck heavy. Not only a corrupt corporation, but neighbors, colleagues, parents from Silas's school. People she greeted in grocery aisles. People who might have watched Gabe drown in his own truth. She looked back at the map, fingers tracing the line that ended just outside town. "This isn't over," she said. "This isn't the win. It's a breadcrumb." Reed nodded. "Still, a damn important one." They packed the drives and papers, quickly sealing them in Reed's waterproof bag. By the time they pushed the warehouse door open again, fog had thickened. Sea wind tugged at Maura's jacket, chilling the sweat on her back. Their boots crunched over gravel and broken shells as they walked toward the car. Reed glanced over his shoulder. "We were lucky. That lock hadn't been touched." Maura kept silent. At the vehicle, her hand lingered on the door. A weight pressed in her chest, dread maybe, or the sense of eyes on her. She turned, but the fog stayed still. What neither of them saw, half a block away, was a figure in a parked car phone camera, steady through a cracked window, capturing Reed's license plate, digit by digit, before vanishing behind a drift of mist. The next door moaned when Reed forced it open, a draft of stale air pushing past. Maura stepped through breath, catching at the sudden chill. The deeper they went, the colder it grew. Corridors stretched ahead like veins under the old military storage site, bare concrete walls, flickering lights, and silence that pressed too close to the ears. She followed Reed past rusted cabinets and sealed vault doors, each step cautious, deliberate. "Third sublevel," he whispered. "That's where Gabe's clearance used to get him." Maura glanced at the broken badge scanner by the stairwell. Someone had smashed it long ago, but the lock had never been repaired. Reed wedged a flathead tool between panel and frame, twisted with precision, and the door released with a mechanical gasp. They stepped into darkness. The flashlight swept across peeling paint, a government seal half torn from the wall, and file drawers stacked to the ceiling like tombstones. Dust hung in the air, stirred by their movement, clinging to coats and settling deep in the folds of Maura's scarf. "This place isn't on any public record," she murmured. "How did you find it?" Reed shrugged. "Pull threads long enough, you find the knots." Rows of binders stretched along the far wall. A few had toppled, others stood upright. Labels faded to beige. Reed scanned quickly until a familiar sequence appeared, GT Lin, then yanked open the drawer. There it was. Project Seahold. Testing reports, navigation systems, deployment protocols. Maura flipped through the pages until a flash of ink caught her eye. Gabe's signature at the bottom of a risk analysis. Beneath it, in a different hand, a line scrawled fast and uneven. "The price of silence is the loss of your soul." Her knees weakened. One palm braced against the cold metal lips, parted with no breath escaping. That handwriting slanted, rushed, written in conflict. She recognized the loops in the West US to the hard-pressed periods. Gabe had left the message for someone to find. He hadn't been silent. He had been ignored. Reed stepped closer but didn't speak. She raised a finger asking for another moment. Her thumb brushed the page's edge as if tracing his presence, still hoping for warmth from it. When her gaze lifted again, it had changed. The grief remained but sharpened into resolve. "We take everything," she said. "Every sheet, every log, that flash drive." Reed nodded and began collecting. A low drone bled from behind the walls, the generator's steady complaint. As they filled the weatherproof satchel, Maura's attention drifted upward to a camera dome. No indicator light. She tilted her head beneath it. "The lens is cracked. Sabotaged or abandoned." Her tone said she didn't believe it. By the time they climbed back up the stairwell, the building's silence felt different, no longer empty, but waiting. Maura stopped just before the exit. Their car was where they'd left it. Something was off. Reed went first. On the passenger window, a mark scratched through the dust angular, two sharp lines crossing a circle. "I've seen that before," he muttered. "On one of the protest boards. But it's not from protesters." Maura didn't respond. She wiped the mark away with her sleeve, opened the door, eyes scanning the lot. Nothing moved. Only the wind rattled chain link nearby. Reed checked the dash. "Cameras are dead. I ran a recorder on the way here, it's gone. Battery fried. Same with my phone." Maura held it up. A black screen. They drove for a long stretch without speaking, neither willing to name the truth out loud. Maura held the folder close, as if loosening her grip might shatter what it carried. A streetlight flared overhead, its brief glow catching the side mirror. A dark sedan eased onto the road a block behind them. No headlights, no license plate. She didn't turn. Didn't need to. Her hand brushed the edge of Gabe's handwriting through the bag, fingers trembling. Her gaze stayed fixed on the window, watching fog crawl back over the coastline like something newly unchained. By the time they reached Royce's porch, her knuckles still ached from holding on too tight. The screen door creaked as he let them in, a nod that welcomed little and said less. She followed Reed across the threshold, the smell of tobacco and aged leather wrapping around her like weight. Royce's living room resembled a war museum, waiting for curation photos of aircraft carriers, a rusted pilot helmet on the mantel, stacks of engineering manuals curling at the corners. A framed medal of commendation leaned sideways against an old radio. He tugged a lamp chain, casting warm light across the clutter. Reed opened the folder, sliding out the schematic Maura had pulled from the archive. "Does this look familiar?" Royce squinted through bifocals, jaw tightening. His fingers traced the page once, then froze midway. "You have no idea what you're holding." Maura stepped closer. "Then tell me." Royce's eyes clouded with more than age fixed on hers. "It's a prototype for a sea rescue beacon. Dual frequency, designed to sync across NATO networks in under 30 seconds, even underwater. Gabe and I spent 2 years trying to optimize its reach. You're saying this works? It worked." He tapped the margin. "But it never launched. Galliant dropped it, said production cost outweighed procurement value. Their phrase, not mine." Her throat went dry. Reed frowned. "Why didn't you say anything when Gabe died?" Royce didn't answer. Instead, he opened a drawer and drew out a plastic envelope, holding it between 2 fingers. Inside lay a second copy of the schematic, creased, water-stained. On the back, Gabe's handwriting. "If anything happens to me, don't let this disappear. M deserves to know." Maura reached for it, but Royce held it back. "He gave me that 3 weeks before the explosion," he said quietly. "But damn it, I was afraid. They were sniffing around already. Men in suits asking questions I didn't like." "You let them erase him," she snapped, stepping back. "You let them turn him into a warning." Royce's shoulders sagged under a weight heavier than shame. "I kept it to protect you." She stared at him. For a long moment, no one breathed. The clock on the far wall ticked twice. "I didn't ask for protection," she said. "I asked for truth." Reed rested a hand lightly on her shoulder. "We need more than blueprints. We need impact." "You mean spectacle," she said bitterly. "I mean proof they can't bury." She gave no reply. Royce slid the envelope across the table. "Do whatever you're going to do." "I'm done hiding." Back in the truck, Maura gripped the steering wheel with both hands, but didn't turn the key. Wind pushed dry leaves across the windshield in slow spirals. Her reflection in the glass seemed older than she remembered, eyes reddened, jaw clamped tight. Reed waited. "You okay?" She lied to herself, she murmured. Thought staying quiet kept Silas safe. "You think going loud will?" Her head turned toward him. "No, but at least I won't be lying anymore." He nodded once, pulled out his phone. "There's a press syndicate I used to write for. If we leak to them, it's all or nothing." "Not yet," her voice steadied. "If this goes public, they'll know I'm coming, and they'll make sure no one listens." Reed lowered the phone. Then what? Maura opened the glove box, scribbled on a notepad, name, location, time. "I'll give them a show they can't control." He glanced over. "You're planning something." She folded the note into her jacket. "I'm not waiting anymore." Down the street, a black sedan idled at the curb, headlights off. Its silhouette filled the side mirror, and she didn't look away. Her hand brushed the envelope in her coat before she dropped the truck into drive and pulled onto the road. By the time her boots struck the chapel steps, the chill of stone seeped through the soles. Bells tolled once, twice, their echoes folding into the September dusk. Candles lined the walkway, flickering in glass jars, too pristine, too polished. It didn't feel like grief. It felt staged. Silas tugged her sleeve. "Why's his picture so big?" A framed portrait of Gabe rested at the altar, draped in navy cloth. His name etched on a bronze plate below: Gabriel Linsley, visionary servant, patriot. She stared at the font. Not the kind he would have chosen. Maura led Silas down the aisle. The pews were half filled with faces she knew but no longer trusted: district politicians. Gallant staff in muted suits, even the mayor, hands folded solemnly, eyes like empty windows. Victor Sennett stood near the pulpit, speaking to a reporter, a gold gallant insignia glinting on his tie. Reed sat in the back, already recording. He gave a faint nod as Maura slipped into the third pew with Silas beside her. Her bag rested in her lap, flash drive hidden under folded tissues. The audio file was short, barely 40 seconds, but Gabe's voice came through sharp, followed by Victor's, colder. She'd clipped the segment carefully. "If you push this, you're not just walking away from a project. You're walking into something you don't understand. I understand exactly what silence costs. Then you also understand what it buys for your family?" A hymn began, mechanical from the organ. Maura barely heard it. Her fingers clenched around the USB drive, throat dry. The plan was simple: wait until the memorial video, walk up during the open mic, plug in the flash, press play. Victor's hand touched the back of a pew as he walked down the center aisle, nodding at mourners. When he reached her row, he paused just long enough to whisper, "Nice turnout. Be a shame if someone's son got lost on the way out." Maura's breath stalled. She turned her head slowly. Victor's expression never shifted, cordial, dry. His gaze flicked toward the far corner. There, near the stained glass window, a man stood, too still to belong among the grieving, hands clasped, watching Silas. Maura glanced at her son, small, fidgety, swinging his feet, sketching circles on his pants. Unaware, her pulse roared. Fight or flight slammed against her chest. She couldn't move. The slideshow began, Gabe's old photos, flashing across the screen: dockyard days, baby Silas in his arms, that last beach trip. Someone behind her sniffled. She gripped the USB until her nails bit into her palm. Every second stretched like pulled wire. Reed's eyes caught hers from across the room. He tilted his head, questioning. Her hand drifted toward the bag's zipper, then stopped. The man near the window edged closer. She seized Silas's hand. "Bathroom," she murmured to no one in particular, and slid out of the pew. Heads turned politely. Reed stood too, but she waved him off without looking. They reached the vestibule just as the slideshow ended. The night pressed heavier now. She drew Silas close and moved quickly toward the lot behind the church. Street lamps hummed above. Her chest ached. Silas peered up. "Are we leaving?" "Just needed air." "You didn't talk." "I wasn't ready." Across the lot, headlights flared, the black sedan again, the same one from the harbor. Maura froze. Silas leaned into her side. She steered him quickly to the truck, started the engine, and backed out without checking mirrors. Victor's words echoed low and venomous. A warning. The USB still burned in her coat pocket. Tears didn't come. Not this time. She drove toward the edge of town, wind rushing through a cracked window, fingers tapping the wheel, slow and deliberate. The night hadn't finished with her yet. She pulled off near the docks and cut the engine. The wind sliced sharper the moment she opened the door. By the time she crouched beside the old granite monument, cold had carved through her jacket in hard lines. The engraved names fishermen lost at sea blurred under her gaze. She checked her watch again. 6:42. Reed was late. Her fingers hovered over the transmitter's casing, triple-checking the wiring. The live stream wouldn't travel through conventional networks. Reed had set up a shortwave backup piggybacking on an old ham relay he once used during a hurricane. All they needed was one solid minute. Lights flared from the road above, not headlights flashing blue. Her body tensed, but the cruiser passed without slowing. She exhaled shakily and pulled her coat tighter. Silas was safe. She dropped him at Elliot's house an hour earlier, barely able to meet his eyes. He'd asked if this was about the secret video, and when she nodded, he'd simply said, "Be careful, Mom." Like he knew something was shifting, like he knew she wasn't coming home the same. Footsteps crunched behind her. Reed emerged from the mist, his cap pulled low. "Phone's dead. Whole grid's jammed. I had to ditch my car 2 blocks out. Someone tailed me." She nodded once. "They hit my place." His face darkened. "Everything's trashed. Front door busted in, garage ransacked. Security feeds blank." They knew exactly what to take. Reed knelt beside her, pulled open the side panel of the transmitter case. "Did they get the file?" "They got the main drive." Her voice was low-clipped. "But I made a copy." His brows rose. "It's in Silas's old toy boat, the one he never lets go. They wouldn't think to look there." Reed blinked, then laughed once, dry, not amused. "You're insane. Tell me something I don't know." The wind shifted. A flag snapped overhead, torn at the edge, soaked from ocean spray. Maura adjusted the antenna's angle. The signal bar blinked orange, then green. Reed handed her a pair of headphones. "Once we go live, there's no pause button. They'll know where we are. We'll be lucky to get 10 minutes before someone pulls the plug. I only need one." He hesitated. "If you play Gabe's voice, it'll be undeniable, but it'll also put a target on your head. There's already one there." A silence settled between them, thick, suspended. Somewhere behind the warehouses, a dog barked. Then came a soft click. Not natural. Not wind. Not wood creaking. She stood. Someone was watching. "I'll go around," Reed murmured, already moving toward the shadows. Maura remained by the monument, her hand steadying the transmitter. Footsteps again, closer this time. A figure approached from the far side of the memorial, tall, bulky, under a dark coat. She couldn't make out a face, but the outline was deliberate. Then a voice, neutral, polite. "Ma'am, you've been asked nicely already." Victor didn't need to raise his voice. He never did. His presence soaked into the space like oil on water, silent, suffocating. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "And yet here I am," she replied, eyes never leaving the blinking transmitter. "You're not thinking clearly. You've let emotion cloud the cost. I'm thinking clearer than I ever have. Your son's going to suffer." She stepped forward, jaw tight. "If anything happens to him, if you so much as look his way again, there won't be enough corporate lawyers on this coast to stop what's coming." Victor's expression didn't flicker. "You've always been dramatic." From the shadows, Reed shouted. Now Maura slammed the switch. The transmitter whirred. A green pulse lit up the small screen. Audio streamed, Gabe's voice filled the still air. "You're walking into something you don't understand? I understand exactly what silence costs. Then you also understand what it buys for your family." Victor moved. Maura yanked the antenna cord free, snatched the drive, and bolted. Footsteps thundered behind her. She didn't look back, just ran. Across gravel, over salt-stained pavement, breath slicing her throat like broken glass. Behind her, the cold wind rose. By the time she reached town the next morning, her legs still ached from the sprint through fog and grit. Now she sat in the waiting room, air processed and stale coffee burned into the walls. Every surface looked polished but tired, as if it had endured too many quiet wars behind closed doors. Her knee bounced uncontrollably as she clutched the folded paper in her coat pocket, the custody contingency written the night before in case something happened. Reed sat beside her, wordless. The receptionist never met her eyes. When the door opened, Garrett Lenning leaned out, older than she remembered, tie-crooked eyes heavy. "Maura," he said gently, "come in." The office hadn't changed. Same stack of outdated magazines, Same rust-colored rug Gabe once joked was the priciest thing in the building. She hadn't been here since the estate documents after the funeral. Across from Garrett, her fingernails dug into her palm. I need to make sure she began. If they come for custody, if something happens, I want Silas to stay with Elliot's family. They agreed. I just need it on paper. Garrett nodded slowly. We can do that. But I need you to hear something first. A file landed between them. Not thick, not formal. A single folded document in an unmarked sleeve. Garrett hesitated. There's been a filing. Not public yet. Victor Sennett submitted a petition for psychological review. Claims you may be mentally unfit to parent. Her breath slowed. The words hung in the air a moment before she reacted. Then the chair scraped sharply. He's trying to what? Her voice cracked. He wants to declare me unfit. Garrett raised both hands, voice calm. It's only a petition, but if approved, they can push for temporary removal. Just until I'm locked away and he wipes Gabe off the map. Her fist slammed the table. The water glass tip struck her elbow and shattered on the carpet. No one moved. Her chest heaved. She stared at the shards glinting like tiny verdicts. God damn him, she whispered. Reed stepped forward, his touch steady on her shoulder. Let's go. Garrett cleared his throat. I'll hold the paperwork, but Maura, don't give them any more reasons. Keep your head down. She offered no reply, only stepped over the glass on her way out. The wind had picked up again. Downtown buzzed faintly behind them as they reached the car. Leaning against the passenger door, she closed her eyes. Every nerve twitched between rage and exhaustion. Reed didn't start the engine right away. He's trying to erase everything, she muttered. Make me the problem. Like I imagined all of it. Like Gabe was just a broken man drowning in paranoia. He's panicking, Reed said. That's why it's messy. Maura laughed, bitter hoarse. He's winning. Reed leaned back, eyes on the windshield. Not yet. She turned toward him, brows drawn. You saw Garrett's face. They're going to take my son. Unless we act before they can. She scoffed. With what our signals burnt, the transmitters toast. They wiped the cameras. We're two people with a thumb drive and a stack of accusations. He met her stare, voice even. That's not all we have. What then? Reed's tone dropped. Their arrogance. The cabin held still, the air thick. They think they've already won, he said, that you'll fold if they push hard enough. Maura stared at the dashboard. Her hands had stopped trembling. Reed reached for the glove box, pulled out a flash drive sealed in plastic. You weren't the only one who made a backup. Her lips parted, no sound escaping. I've been preparing since they torched my last job. Kept it on a dead drop loop, hidden in plain sight. They don't know I still have it. What's on it? The engine turned over its hum, cutting the silence. Enough to bring half of Galleon's board before a federal committee? She turned, voice steadier. Why didn't you say anything? Eyes on the road, he merged into traffic. Because we weren't ready. Buildings blurred past her window, a billboard promising safe neighborhoods, a mural of a smiling soldier painted in dull colors. Her voice barely carried over the engine. And now Reed's jaw tightened. Now, he said, we make them ready. By the time Maura pushed through the side doors of the township hall, the scrape of folding chairs and low murmur of voices pressed against her. Dust clung to her boots from the gravel lot, her hands clasped tight beneath her coat. Reed had already drifted toward the projector cart, fingers ghosting over a small remote hidden in his jacket. Royce leaned on a cane nearby, his posture more defiance than frailty. Every seat was filled, the air brittle with anticipation. A banner reading Township Technical Review Forum sagged above the stage corners, curling under the weight of old tape and older intentions. Fluorescent lights whined overhead, washing press suits, worn denim, and the occasional military badge in a flat glare. Victor Sennett took the podium, polished smile, intact cadence, tuned for boardrooms. We at Galleon, he began, believe in the power of restoration, not just of infrastructure, but of trust. A ripple of nods moved through the crowd. Cameras clicked softly. A city planner tugged at his tie. We are pleased to unveil our new coastal logistics initiative, repurposing decommissioned installations for economic renewal. The screen behind him flickered to life, animated renderings of smiling workers, sleek cargo lines looping across a sanitized map of the bay. Maura's pulse stayed level. For now. Victor's voice carried on. Our data indicates full environmental compliance and no residual interference from previous the projector seized. The screen glitched, then static. A single, still image took shape, grainy at first. A man in coveralls crouched over a workbench, soldering cable ends with methodical precision. His profile in half shadow, his jaw unmistakable. Gabe. Gas rippled through the hall. Victor blinked, eyes darting. That feed is not the video rolled. Gabe's voice filled the room clear and close like he was standing among them. This unit could save lives in a sub-zero breach. But they don't want it cheap, they want it branded controlled. He paused in the footage, glanced toward the camera. If you're seeing this, I probably didn't get to show it myself. Maura's throat tightened. Every fiber in her stilled. The room dissolved around her. Victor told me it'd ruin everything if I leak specs. But you don't build safety and bury it in concrete. You don't let people drown because it's not marketable. The feed skipped, then resumed. Victor's voice came through a speakerphone, calm, unmistakable. You were given a directive, Gabe. If you violate protocol, there will be consequences. This is bigger than you. Then Gabe, again quieter. Don't let silence bury what matters. Victor lunged toward the AV console. Kill that feed, he barked, jabbing at a volunteer. The young man froze. Reed stepped forward, calm. It's already live streamed. Gasps swelled into murmurs, a current rising beneath fluorescent light. A council member shot up. What the hell is this, Senate? Victor tried to steady himself, but sweat gleamed at his temple. That recording is edited, illegally obtained. None of this. Royce's voice cut through. Can you confirm that isn't your voice? Victor opened his mouth, closed it. The silence was louder than anything else. Reporters grabbed for phones. A woman whispered Gabe's name. Another muttered, always knew something was off with Galliant. Maura stayed rooted, eyes locked on the frozen image. Gabe looking straight into the lens, weary and brave. Her fingers tingled around the locket buried deep in her pocket. She hadn't opened it in years. Victor tried to step down, but 3 officials intercepted him. Reed edged closer. You okay? He whispered. She nodded slowly. Not because she was, but because she was ready. By the time her boots struck the pavement outside the municipal building the next morning, echoes of the night still lingered. Raised voices, camera flashes, the retreating click of courtroom heels. A low fog clung to the steps like it wasn't ready to let go. She parked farther down the block this time, not to hide, but because she no longer needed to be seen. Her stride was steady, purposeful. No trembling hands, no second glances toward the door. At the entrance, a guard she vaguely recognized gave her a nod. Not pitying, not wary, simply respectful. The corridors beyond felt thinner, stripped of that invisible weight that used to press her shoulders down. The sun had begun to break through. Not warm exactly, but steady, no longer hiding behind clouds or smoke or rumors. Royce waited on a bench near the sidewalk, wrapped in his patched army coat, cane across his lap. He didn't stand when he saw her, just lifted a hand in greeting. She sat beside him. They called me in for a deposition next week, he said, watching a crow circle the courthouse roof. Guess it's time I tell them what I should have told you months ago. Her gaze stayed fixed on the courthouse window. I used to want revenge, she said, for Gabe, for what they took. But this is different. It's not about rage anymore. Royce exhaled, the breath sharp with age and guilt. He'd be proud of you, Maura, not for fighting, but for surviving it. She didn't answer. A beat passed, then her phone buzzed in her pocket, a message from Silas's school. Just a photo, her son mid-laugh holding a clay submarine with toothpick antennae. Sunlight streamed through classroom windows in the background. Her fingers hovered over the screen, eyes catching the faintest glimmer. She whispered, I see him now, Royce. Who? Gabe? In Silas? In me? She exhaled, steady and clean. For the first time since he died, I see him. Royce said nothing, and she didn't need him to. When she rose from the bench, her steps already carried her toward the place she hadn't entered in months. The door creaked louder than memory as she pushed it open. Sunlight sliced across the concrete floor through grime-caked windows. Dust hovered like breath held too long, and everything inside felt paused, caught between memory and movement. She left the lights off, letting the weak glow of late-season daylight claim the space. Boots brushed over curled blueprints and stray screws, remnants of mornings once filled with Gabe's humming and the clatter of tools. Her hands worked on instinct, clearing a bench, folding a tarp, tossing frayed gloves into the bin. Not because they were useless, because she was ready. Silas sat on the step leading down from the back porch, knees tucked up to his chest, sketchpad on his lap. The pages fluttered with each gust, slipping through the broken pane. "You're not keeping the wrench with the blue tape?" he asked, watching her drop it into a cardboard box labeled for donation. She turned, brushing her hair from her forehead with her wrist. "It doesn't work anymore. Handle's cracked." "But it was his favorite one," Silas said quietly. Maura crouched beside the box, letting her hands rest on the edges. "It was," she agreed. Silas didn't push further, just watched as she stood again, moved to the far wall where the shelves had gone untouched for 2 years. There, among oil cans and rusted bolts, sat the old metal lunchbox Gabe used to carry, still dented from where it fell off the dock that one winter morning. She opened it, found a few screws, a folded paper napkin with scribbles of math that only Gabe would understand, and a half-worn pencil. She held it a moment longer than the others, then slid it into her back pocket. The rest went into the trash. "I was thinking," Silas said after a while, "maybe we could paint the walls. You know, different color. Something brighter." Maura glanced over. "Brighter, huh? Dad always said it was too dark in here. Remember?" She nodded once, brushing her palms on her jeans. He watched her a moment longer. "Would he be mad if we changed it?" A breath caught in her chest, but it didn't burn like before. She moved to the window and cleared the glass with her sleeve until the view sharpened a pale sky, yellow grass, a tire swing barely shifting in the wind. "I think he'd want us to live here," she said softly. "Not just remember." Silas tilted his head. "So, he'd be okay if we let some stuff go." Her back was still to him, but she nodded. He went quiet again, then flipped to a new page in his sketchbook. The sound of pencil scratching joined the room's silence, and Maura kept cleaning. The tall shelf by the north wall held the last thing Maura hadn't dared touch: Gabe's plans. Dozens of them rolled tight edges, fading to yellow. She began working through the stack, some slid into storage tubes, others duplicates or failed versions. She tore carefully in half and discarded. Not with anger, not bitterness, just care. Then, wedged between two dusty prototypes, she found it. The original design. His submarine beacon system, hand-drawn, annotated in that neat, unhurried script she could still hear in her head. She lingered over it, tracing every line, every note scribbled in the margins. She framed the sheet and hung it above the main workbench, where sunlight struck just enough to make the ink gleam. No longer hidden in a folder, no longer evidence or burden. It was memory transformed. Silas patted over, glanced up at it, then back at her. "You think he'd like it up there?" "I think," she said, voice steady now, he'd say, "it finally found its place." He pressed against her side, and she let her arms settle around his shoulders. For once, neither of them recoiled. The wind stirred, not wild, not sharp, just enough to lift the tarp at the back and rattle the loose hinge on the shed. A reminder that life kept moving, carrying them forward into whatever waited next. The chair beneath her felt rigid, polished wood pressing into her spine as if daring her to shift. Maura sat in the third-row middle seat, back straight, palms flat on her thighs except for the occasional twitch in her fingers. Silas leaned close, fidgeting, with a silent Rubik's Cube, lips pressed in concentration. His presence steadied her more than anything else could. The air in the room was too clean, too sterile to hold the weight about to drop. Reed stood near the media row gear slung across his shoulder. A thin red wire peeked from his collar, already live broadcasting to whoever still cared enough to tune in. The chairwoman of the federal committee stepped to the podium. Gray suit, clipped vowels, a voice built for courtrooms and press conferences. Behind her, a projection screen flickered to life, the official seal of the Defense Oversight Task Force filling the wall. After 6 months of cross-agency review and witness testimony, the woman began, "We are prepared to release our findings." Maura exhaled once quietly. Her jaw stayed locked. The Galliant Corporation, under the direction of Senior Executive Victor Sennett, misused allocated defense funds through falsified pilot programs, data suppression, and deliberate misreporting of field tests. This constitutes a breach of contract and potential criminal fraud under federal statute. A hush spread across the room, not gasps, not outrage, but the quiet that comes when people hear what they already knew, yet needed voiced aloud. Further, several municipal officials in this district, names listed in your press packet, collaborated in covering or delaying internal investigations in exchange for undisclosed contributions and political incentives. The screen behind her shifted to photographs, Victor pale and tense in a booking photo. Two city administrators Maura vaguely recognized. A zoning officer who'd once refused her permit request without explanation. But not Gabe. The woman continued, due to insufficient preserved documentation and the absence of live corroborating testimony, certain personnel connected to now-defunct research branches cannot be formally included in today's restorative actions. No mention. Not even a line break where his name might have belonged. Maura blinked slowly. She didn't flinch, didn't cry. Her hands clenched tighter, nails pressing faint crescents into her jeans. But her spine didn't bend. Behind her, Royce's phone buzzed in her pocket. She checked it under the table. We don't need them to say it out loud. We already know what he gave up. She locked the screen, slid it away. Beside her, Silas looked up at the podium, tilting his chin like he was trying to understand the architecture of justice. His voice barely brushed her ear. Dad's still listening, right? Maura's gaze didn't leave the stage. Yes, she whispered, not because she wasn't sure, but because saying it softly made it feel more permanent. The Q&A began. Reporters surged forward with questions, demanding statements, timelines, accountability. Reed raised his hand and was called second. In light of the suppressed engineering documents recovered, he said, voice steady into the room's PA, do you plan to review past accidents dismissed during earlier audits? The committee chair nodded. We are reopening cases as needed, and we thank independent investigators for contributions leading to these actions. Reed didn't press further. He lowered the mic and stepped back into the margin of the room where he belonged. Never the spotlight, always the match that lit the page. A man a few seats down leaned toward Maura. You were right all along. She offered no reply, leaving him with his own discomfort. When the conference adjourned, cameras clicked off, and the crowd rose in a ripple of rustling coats and shuffled shoes, everyone trying to look busy, as if something rotten hadn't just been dragged into daylight. Silas tugged her sleeve. Can we go to the water? She nodded rows with him and threaded through the rows without acknowledging the eyes that followed. A hand reached out for hers. She kept walking. Wind cut across the flagpoles as they stepped into the cold afternoon. Gabe's voice echoed in her memory, steady and low. We build things to save people, not to bury the truth with them. She held on to that, not his omission from records, not the silence that tried to erase him, but the work he left behind. Something she could carry forward. Maybe not for everyone, but for her and for Silas, it was enough to begin. Later, her palms wiped against her jeans as she stepped back from the workbench, letting the next kid take over. The scent of oil and sawdust lingered, not as ghosts of the past, but as claims newly made. The workshop stood at the edge of the old port, an open, high-ceilinged shed, once reeking of anchors and diesel. Now it pulsed with voices, bursts of laughter, the metallic ring of tools, and the occasional overconfident hammer strike. Myra, 14, and slight as a feather, leaned over a vice-clamped tongue between her teeth as she tried to thread a bolt. Maura crouched beside her, tapped twice on the left wrench. Myra adjusted. The thread caught. Behind them, Royce shuffled between benches, clipboard in hand, checking torque specs, like a priest at ritual. He scolded a crooked frame, but his eyes softened when a boy asked if a wrench could become a sword if necessary. Reed lingered in the corner with his camera rig. No broadcast this time, just footage, patient and deliberate, shaping a record that might outlast headlines. He wasn't interested in telling people what to think anymore, only what to remember. The side door banged open and Silas barreled in, dragging a lanky boy with wary eyes and a ripped backpack. This is Jasper, Silas declared. He wants to learn welding, but he thinks it's not for him, 'cause his dad says it's only for dropouts. Maura glanced up from the tool rack. The boy avoided her gaze. He can start with shop safety and hand drills, she said evenly. Silas grinned. Told you. Jasper followed him toward the back, still uncertain whether this place was a joke or something larger than he could yet name. He passed a photo pinned to the wall, three figures on a dock, Maura younger and windblown, Gabe arms wrapped around her and their son, and in the distance a steel gray vessel cutting through the water like it knew where it was headed. No plaque, no caption, just there. Maura picked up a wrench from the bench, turned it once in her hand, then extended it to a girl watching from the doorway. No words. The girl hesitated, stepped forward and took it. Her grip was awkward, uncertain. That was the point. This wasn't about mastery, it was about momentum. A breeze drifted through the open bay doors. Sunlight caught flecks of dust in the air, turning them golden. Someone dropped a socket behind her. Someone else laughed too loud. Machines clanked, boots scuffed concrete. A bell rang when the side door opened again. No speeches, no banners, no declarations stapled to the wall. But in every motion, every tightened bolt, every wire stripped clean, something was being said. And Maura didn't need to say it out loud. Some truths aren't made of headlines or courtroom verdicts. They live in quiet defiance in a mother's refusal to break in a child's belief that his father still hears him. Maura never asked to be a hero, but when no one else stood up, she did. And maybe that's the most powerful kind of justice, the one born not from power, but from love. If this story moved you, don't forget to follow our channel. More emotional stories of courage, healing, and resilience are coming your way.